Welcome to Season 6 of the Get Out of Teaching podcast. This podcast is for teachers who are considering leaving education and need some support. I'm your host, Elizabeth Diakos. I'm a career transition coach and the host of the Get Out of Teaching private membership community, where we support teachers with the resources they need to create a life they love. Find out more at www.getoutofteaching.com. In this season, we'll be speaking with former teachers who have set themselves up in business, as well as some business coaches and solopreneurs who can inspire you as you plan your exit, especially if you've been thinking of creating your own business. Come along for the ride as we get out of teaching. Episode 12. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. On today's show, I'm really delighted to be speaking with Mary Henderson, who's a personal branding and online business specialist. Welcome to the show, Mary.
Hi, Elizabeth. It's great to be here.
So, Mary, tell us, what is a personal branding and online business specialist?
Well, that's my specialization, Elizabeth. That comes with a 40,000 hour, life and professional experience. And essentially what I do is I help industry experts. They could be academics, C-suites, authors, keynote speakers, etc. I help them convert their knowledge, wisdom, and skill set into a coaching or a consulting business and also a brand so that they can become an authority in their area of specialization.
I love that. So who are the kinds of people that you work with?
And
how do people find you?
Yeah, great question. So my clients are really smart, like they're super smart. They've got, 10, 20, 30 years of accumulated experience, both professionally and, and personally. And typically they could be, as I said before, academics, people that have spent a long time in the system. They're frustrated, they're specialists in their area, they're earning no way near what they believe they should be earning. And my job is to take all of that, what I call internal inventory, and convert that into a solution that can solve a complex problem specifically for a person or a business in an industry. So they're the type of people that I would typically work with, C-suites who are transitioning out of corporate into consultancy. And typically I'm very, very, very active on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, right across the board, lots of podcasts, but LinkedIn is kind of my home. That's my hub. I've built a very big following on LinkedIn. And I just find, Elizabeth, that on LinkedIn, you can actually start a mature conversation, which is right up my alley. So you're actually talking to people who are super smart. They want to talk with mature people, not beat around the bush, just get to the point. So that's kind of the hub where I sort of hang out.
Okay, so if someone wants to find you, LinkedIn's the place, and we will put all of your information in the show notes for this episode. So if people want to find out more about you or meet with you, then they can do that easily. Excellent. Okay, so how did you get into this in the first place? What were you doing before you began your business?
Well, the thing is, Elizabeth, that I get to call the loves of my life my vocation. So 22 years of experience. I have a combination of personal branding, which I learned and came face to face with, like literally experienced it in year 2000. Wrapped around that was my expertise in sales for many, many years in the tech business. And also having my own software company, which I owned for 7 years. And that was very immersed in the software development space, which is where I learned how to build systems. And of course, the lead generation, which is a direct link to sales. These are all the areas that I've mastered over the last 22 years. But not only have I mastered them, I've systemized all aspects of my specialization, which is something that I'm very, very passionate about. So this is a lot of years. When I started my coaching business, that's a whole interesting dynamic, because that was that, how we all have those sliding door moments. Here I am on one hand running this software company for 7 years, targeting the academic sector. I really understand that sector very, very well. And then in year 2011, I had my second child. And, it was just 3 hours after he was born when I just had that life-changing experience. I went to reach out to get a lip balm, to put lip balm on my lips. My business card fell out. I held onto that business card and I'm like, oh my God, my whole life has been a series of labels. And I realized also that business that I had built from ground up, which by the way, was turning over 7 figures a year. I had an infrastructure. On the outside, you would think, oh my God, she's so lucky. On the inside, I'm like, this is not my purpose. Like, I am not meant to be running a software company. However, there were elements in my company that I really loved. It was easy for me to do, but there were a lot of aspects of that business that I really didn't like to do. So 3 weeks after that, I resigned from my own company. I then engaged a professor in philosophy to mentor me January 2012. I took the entire year off. I sold my company. I was free from the system, if you will. Like, I was free from what everyone else wanted Mary to be. And suddenly I found myself trying to find out who I am. And it was in 2015 where I actually started my coaching business. That was when this whole dynamic of what I do now started in that process. But it took me 3 years to design and develop my coaching business, and also the frameworks and the system to support what I do today.
Wow. So you're obviously, and in the meantime, you're also being a parent.
Parent to 2 boys.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's awesome. And so while all that was happening, what was going on globally, like financial crisis and all those kinds of things happening?
There was no financial crisis at that time. I think that for me, and even if there was, Elizabeth, I was oblivious to it all because I was going through my own personal trauma, like my internal trauma. I had lots of really big questions. Who am I? What is my purpose? What is this all about? What am I doing here? What am I meant to be doing? And I had the courage to cut the cord on a lot of things that I believe that I should be a part of. I'm talking like things as dumb as my credit cards, got rid of those, social circles, things like that. It was more about what was going on inside of me that I felt I needed to sort out. The outside world was oblivious to me.
Okay. And so it sounds like there was a bit of a really kind of monumental shift in the way you ran your life.
Absolutely. And I think also, most importantly, it's coming to that realization where you can actually admit face to face in the mirror that what I'm doing now is not working for me. It's actually me going against the grain, and it's tiring. It's energy consuming. I know for sure this is not what I'm meant to be doing for the rest of my life. So I think there was more around that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that happened. What next? What was the next step for you?
The next step for me was, as I said, taking the time out to design. So I had 12 months with this mentor. I had another mentor as well. So I had quite a few mentors in that year. In some ways I was messed up, like not like as a psychopath, but messed up as in like, I have no idea what it is that I'm meant to be doing. And my mentor, the professor in philosophy, he really helped me unpack aspects of myself that I really never considered. And I think that we take for granted, or somewhere along the line, we've all been made to believe that, oh, what I do, everyone else can do. So, what's so special about me? I truly believe that this is the mindset that so many of us have held on to, or have made it our normal, if you will. But the thing is, Elizabeth, it's not the case. Nobody can do what I do in the way that I do it. Okay. Everyone may do what I do, but they can't deliver it in the way that I do it. So that's the first realization. So when I started to unpack all of the things that Mary can do with ease and grace, with my eyes closed, then I started to see a pattern. Oh my God, like, wow, of course I understand sales. Of course I understand branding. Of course I understand systems. Of course I understand digitization. How can I merge all of that inventory together and figure out how I can solve a problem? And that's why it took a long time, because I didn't want to go into the market and just react and just be a little bit of something. I genuinely felt, for me, it was so important to be the master of one outcome. And that takes time, just understanding that process of what your inventory looks like and how to convert that into a currency. That takes time. So that was that sliding door moment.
Okay, so a lot of the people who are listening in would be really, I think, resonating with what you're saying about finding your purpose and having like who am I and what am I put on this earth to do? How do you work that out?
Yes, that's a very interesting process. And this is something that I've mastered. So typically when people come to work with me, that's the pain point. It's like, I've got all this experience, Mary. I don't know how to put it together and create one solution and ask for $20,000, $30,000 for that service. And there's nothing special about that. It's just that I'm a systems person naturally. So I can take data and I can organize it so it makes sense to not you, the person that needs that solution solved. Mm-hmm. So we've got to put ourselves not in what I can do, but what does the target audience, what do I believe my target audience needs solved? And it's almost working backwards from that. So, where it takes, I've seen this happen time and time again. It takes months, weeks, to actually design a solution. For me, it takes hours. I can listen to somebody, I can take all of that inventory and then bang, I organize it into a solution. And it's essentially becomes their online program. It can become a workshop. They can deliver it however they want, but it is what I call their signature solution. And then you can take aspects of that and sell micro solutions from the macro. So it is about understanding how to think of it like an Excel spreadsheet. Each column, has an attribute, and it's understanding what those attributes look like so that you can just then merge it together and then decide what the solution looks like, who needs the solution, what does it, what industry is that person or business in, what are they prepared to pay for it. These are all the aspects that we need to start unpacking rather than just hoping that we can go into a business, have a conversation and get the gig. It doesn't work like that anymore. Mm-hmm. What people want to see is that you have a tried and tested system in place that can take them from pain to glory in a specific amount of time.
I love that, from pain to glory. That sounds like a great motto.
It is, but it's true. I mean, think about it. If you come to me or I come to you, I'm expecting you to solve my problem. I mean, I'm in pain and I want to spend the 12 weeks with you, but at the end of the 12 weeks or the 10 weeks or whatever, I want to get to glory. I want to celebrate. I want to know that my problem's being solved. I'll pay you. I'll invest in myself, in my personal development, as long as I know you can take me to that promise.
Yeah. And I think that's true. Although I have noticed, I think, in the education sector, often schools provide that kind of learning for teachers. And so it's hard for teachers to go, I need to choose what I'm going to invest in for myself. And it's not going to be imposed, but I need to decide for myself what's the next thing I need to learn, or what's the next help that I need to get. How do you go about making those decisions when you're at that that brink of I'm about to make a big change?
I think that career transition is, to me, the most exciting place to be in. I truly believe that these are typically the people that I work with. In fact, I'm working with a teacher at the moment, and what she's been able to do, and this might help your audience, is that she's had 25 years in teaching, writing curriculums, more of a technical role as a teacher. But she has remarkable leadership skills, like absolutely outstanding leadership skills. She's the mediator. She's the one that comes in and that can, just pull two sides together to come to a decision. Mm-hmm. So based on that and her expertise, we've been able to design this extraordinary program. She hasn't even launched, and she's already sold. She's already got 2 contracts with a major training company, all because she identified that there's a gap in the education system based on the industry that or the sector that she's in. Yeah. And she's been able to close that gap with a solution that can solve that problem within that sector. So it's just been fabulous to work with those type of people. I work with academics in the university space as well. And it really is about just narrowing it down, Elizabeth. So many people are so broad. It's like, I can do this and this and this. And this is, I see this as a pattern with a lot of academics, by the way. It's like, but I've got so much smarts. Yes, I know you do. But we can incorporate all of those smarts within the solution. But we just want people to know you as the go-to person for one thing only. Once you've nailed that, everything else becomes so easy.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's, when I'm working with get out of teaching clients, first of all, they have to get over the grief of,
Yes.
I'm leaving this career that I thought was my calling. I thought it was the one. And now suddenly I discover it's not the one anymore. And I'm heartbroken about that. And then there's the fear. I just got off a call with a client and she said, I'm going in this circle. Actually, I wrote it down. She said, I'm going in this circle between excitement, being terrified, being anxious, being happy, being lost, and back to being excited again. And it's just like, this circle of,
I love it.
And trying to discover how you can take your skills and your experience, but also your passion, and
Yes.
find your purpose. It can be really scary and heartbreaking too, because it's like leaving a relationship. You thought you had the one,
Yes.
you thought you'd found the one, and then they turn out not to be the one. And what do you do then? You're there by yourself, and you don't know where to go next. And I find a lot of teachers get to a crisis point, not only in their workplace, but also in their personal relationships, and it all kind of comes to a head at the same time. And then, the world starts to implode for them. It's hard. How do you get over that?
Elizabeth, I've been there. I know exactly what you're saying when you say that. And the thing is that here's the thing, okay? When we're in a corporate environment, whether it's a school or a university or just a corporate blue chip company, it doesn't matter what it is. We have to understand one thing and be very clear on this. And I think a lot of people sort of miss this part. Working in those systems is a survival system. That's what it's based on. It's a very masculine system. It's dog eat dog, who's going to get to the top first. So we're in survival constantly in those environments. And when we get out of those environments and we're transitioning into something new, let's call it, I want to start my own business, that then means that we've got to tap into our potential. That's what I call the feminine system. And that's scary, because when at school were we ever taught, hey, children, let's do a class on your feelings and your potential, because one day you're going to actually need to tap into that. We're not taught that. We are taught how to survive even in the school system. The teachers, the whole curriculum is wrapped around that, preparing the children for their future, which again steps into a masculine power system that's all based on survival. Once we understand that and we have that click, then we're like, oh my God, of course I've been in survival. So now the second part is, do we just give up that masculine power system and say that was then and this is now? Absolutely not. This is where we must understand how to use and leverage that masculine power system in this new version of ourselves, which is now called the implementation of my business. So this is where we need to start understanding, what parts of my business do I need to learn and implement in order to move me closer and closer to my goal and my potential. So we're working with a masculine system in a very different way. We're working with a feminine system that we've hardly ever tapped into. And now suddenly these two things merge together, and it's frightening because we've never, ever, ever stepped into that place of discomfort and made it comfortable. So so my advice to anyone listening to this is, just take a step back and just understand where you've come from. It's just been purely a masculine system based on survival, which you've relied on for the last 10, 20, 30 years. On the 15th of every month, you get your pay, you go home, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. Now you've stepped out of that. There's no rinse and repeat. So it's scary, but it shouldn't be scary until we actually understand how to play and dance with both of these systems.
As you were talking about those, the strengths that we bring and the potential that we have, you reminded me of one day one of my colleagues came into the staff room when I was teaching, and she said, "Oh, um, little Johnny." Wasn't little Johnny, but anyway, he just shoved a fork into the PowerPoint and like flung himself across the room because he got a electroshock.
Electrocuted.
And I had that class I was teaching performing arts, and I had gotten them to do the values in action strengths survey,
Yes.
the kid version of it. And so
Yes.
and I said to so I saw the class later in the week out, and I'd heard this story, and I said, "Oh, Johnny, tell me, just out of interest, what was your top character strength?" Curiosity. No surprises there.
I love it.
So he was tapping into his feminine side quite early.
Wow. My
Yeah.
sort of kid.
Yeah.
We call those people disruptors and black sheeps, right? We do have a label for them as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love it.
Anyway, thankfully he survived his childhood. So, but yeah, I think there's lots of scope there for being able to appreciate those strengths that we bring and that creative side. And I know for me, like when I was, they ask you in university, like, where are your strengths? And I would have always said, up until I was probably a parent,
Yes.
that it was more creative, and there were sort of that humor and love of life and love of learning and curiosity would be my top strengths. And then over time I had to develop this whole other skill set, which was more that survival stuff, make sure you get to places on time, don't miss the aeroplane, those kinds of things.
Yes.
And it's just like, oh, not my happy place.
No. But it's necessary, right?
Yeah,
We've got to balance the two together.
Absolutely.
And we're either one side or the other, and we've got to merge them two together.
Okay, so if someone came to you and they were about to leave and they're facing this feeling of fear and excitement and all of the emotions, jumbled up together, how would you advise them to move forward?
That's a wonderful question, Elizabeth, because I usually advise people not to leave their job until all the implementation has been completed with me. And the reason for that is that it's too confronting to just leave what you've always known and step on the other side of the fence to something that's completely foreign. Okay. And so I never, ever advise anyone to leave just hardcore, just flip the switch and go cold. So typically what they do is they work with me as of 1st of September. My coaching program is now 12 months. So they work with me in 12 months. It's a beautiful group. And it's a done with you. So it's like they follow all of the implementation, everything's laid out, all the frameworks, because I want them to see movement every single week. Once you're implementing and you can see something actually fulfilled and it's alive, then you're motivated to keep going. So we do a little bit every single week, and typically by about week 16 to 24, in between that space, all of their moving parts are in place. All the strategies have been designed, their branding's done, website, all the digital assets are completed. They've systemized their solutions. They're working on their lead generation strategy. Now they're ready for launch. Now, at that point, I still say, don't lose your job. The only time you would leave your job is if you're in a position where you can leave your job, because you can still show up on social media and create posts, not sales posts, just posts based on your passion and your love. That's 100% congruent with what it is that you're doing, and start to build your brand presence on social media. And typically that takes about 90 days. Okay. So I just like to transition people slowly out of their current situation into the new situation, because all that I teach can be done in the background. I call it the contingency plan. And I love that because, for example, when COVID hit and a lot of teachers lost their jobs, this is the ideal time to be building a contingency plan, because should there be another academic, you can flip the switch and suddenly you're a coach, like quite literally overnight, because everything's in place and you can start monetizing that immediately. So don't leave your job. It's not necessary to leave your job immediately. The key is to build your contingency plan behind the scenes, and that's my advice.
So I know so many teachers who are still in the job, and I get on a call with them and they go, oh, I haven't done my homework, or I haven't been able to, you know, get my ABN or whatever small task was like next on the list,
Yeah.
because I've just been overwhelmed at work.
Yeah.
Or they don't return the call, or they don't show up on the call because they're just exhausted. So how do you get around that? I know you said about if you see progress, it's motivating. But when you're just completely swamped by work, how do you get through that?
Well, when I'm working with people, there is an Excel spreadsheet that goes week 1, week 2, week 3, right up until week 24. And there are very specific tasks that have to be completed in that week. Now, it doesn't mean that it requires 5 hours. It could just require an hour of their time. But what I like to say is you have to book a time in your calendar for you. It's just as simple as that, because I call that self-care. To me, if I can't give myself 1 hour a week, there's something fundamentally wrong with my life. Because it's like when you think of this analogy, when you go on an airplane, what do they say about the oxygen mask? Do I put it on my child first or myself? I put it on myself first before I can attend to others. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
And it's the same in our life. If I can't attend to Mary first and give Mary and fill my cup every week, whether it's an hour or two, how do I serve others? Even showing up as a teacher, because I'm constantly showing up in that energy of stress, frustration, limited time. It's all, it's all like low vibrational energy. I want to show up and be excited because I know that I'm heading towards something bigger and better. And I think that when I can give people that micro of a plan that they just have to follow, I don't want you to do any more. This is it. And then they tick that off their list. There is a sense of fulfillment. But the power with what I do, Elizabeth, is that they show up 2 live coaching calls a week, which are in the evening, and it's their time, because the people on that call are all like them. So there's a lot of they advocate for one another. There's support. I teach mental mastery that you can't find in self-help books. So those calls that I give are for me to give those individuals the time that they need for self-mastery. It's very important. So to me, managing your time is priority, like absolute priority. I know teachers are amazing. I know that what they do is like unbelievable. But if we can't give ourselves 1 hour on a Sunday afternoon, then they're not ready for this. So there's I can't help everybody. I can only give advice.
Yeah. Okay. So as you were creating your business and setting your things up, how did you go about that right at the very beginning? What were the first steps that you took?
The first steps I took was just understanding what is it that I can do with ease and grace. Like, what can I do? If somebody came to me and said, hey, can you help me with X? What is that? So I already knew, like really easily, that if you came to me, Elizabeth, and said, hey, Mary, I need some help with a sales strategy, I would say, oh, Elizabeth, that's easy. Let me just walk this. I'll just draw it for you. I'll illustrate it on the whiteboard. You go from here to here. Da, 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 da. So I knew that I could do sales. I knew how to turn people into brands. I managed lots of big sales teams. We never had job descriptions. I turned them all into brands. That was my job description, because every person has got their specialization. Every person's got their passions, their gifts, their talents, their values. I wanted to capture that in a person and match that individual with the right client portfolio, because that's how you bring the best out of people. So I knew how to do branding. I also knew how to design systems. Systems architecture is one of my areas of specialization. So I can take an idea and I can turn it into literally an algorithm, because that's how my brain thinks. Okay, so I can do that as well. And then, of course, lead generation strategy is something else that I can do. Once I understood all of the areas that I can do with ease and grace, then the second thing was, what would it look like for me to take Elizabeth through a personal branding session with me? Like, how would I actually do that? And this is where we have to start unpack that genius. We've got to walk ourselves through a situation where I am sitting with Elizabeth, And I'm taking Elizabeth through a process of elimination to get you to the promise that if I can promise you that I can define your brand proposition, what you do, who you serve, what you promise, then I need to show you how to do that. And for me, it's all about empowerment as well. That's the overlay. So that's the first step. The very first step is to understand, what can I do with ease and grace? And we just need to answer that, write it out. Sales. Okay, awesome. Now you've identified sales. How would you actually take me, your client, on a sales journey where I've got a problem where I can't generate sales to generating sales? What does that process look like? And so teachers are brilliant at this. If anyone can create systems, it's teachers. So we need to be able to show the journey, as I said before, from pain to glory.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so tell me a little bit more about brand. Like, I've been to a style coach a while ago, and she said, you're a romantic. And so she said, don't straighten your hair anymore, let it be curly, because, that's more romantic. But is it just about style? What else is there involved in branding?
No, because the thing is, you see, this is where a lot of people go wrong with branding. And from my standpoint, I take branding so seriously. We've actually built a software around it. I'm going to tell you why. If we just create brand from the standpoint of the look and the feel, how do I commercialize that, Elizabeth? If I can't commercialize me, the brand, then I'm just back to where I was. So personal branding is different to corporate branding. Same attributes, different outcomes. Why? A personal brand is me, the business. I, the human, have become the business. I'm the brand. Mary Henderson is the brand. Not my coach, the name of my coaching program. That's irrelevant. It's me. I'm the brand. Elizabeth, you're the brand. So when I look at it from that standpoint, I'm looking at all of the attributes that makes up a brand, because when you're building a brand, a personal brand, your driver is your legacy, the legacy you're going to leave. That's your ultimate driver. And so we've got to work backwards from that. All of the attributes that make up a personal brand, your story, your gifts, your talents, your passions, your skill set, all of those attributes need to be refined and defined. They also need to tell a story, and they also need to be congruent with your solution and the audience that you can serve as well. If there's no congruency, how do you then create your messaging into the marketplace? Because in my personal branding system falls not just who you are as a brand, your brand truth and your brand essence and your branding architecture, that's a given. But in there also falls, who is it that you can serve? What does that audience actually look like? Where is that audience on their buying cycle? And then based on that, the problem that I can solve and my brand and my brand story have to have a direct connection in order for me to be believable and trustable. Also in the brand component is my messaging. So how do I start a conversation with my target audience on LinkedIn? Like, quite literally, or Facebook, or even me having this conversation with you on a podcast. Could you imagine if I came on this podcast and I started talking about my weight loss journey the last 6 months? It would be a little bit weird, because people will be like, hang on a minute, she's a personal branding and online specialist. She's talking about her personal journey, which is fine, but there's no connection between that and what it is that I can do, who it is that I can serve, what it is that I can promise. Mm-hmm. So when we get our personal branding architecture defined and implemented, everything else is so much easier. And the most important thing that becomes even more easy is your content strategy and your lead generation strategy. It then becomes the effect of the cause.
Mm-hmm. And just that idea of that, this is, everything has to be aligned.
Yes.
And it's got to resonate. And I love the idea of creating a lasting legacy as well.
Yes. Oh my God. Well, otherwise, why would we do this for? Most people that go on this, get on this trajectory, their driver is the legacy. It's like, I just have a burning desire. I don't know what it looks like. I can't explain it to you, Mary, but there's something much bigger inside of me that I want to self-realize. That's the type of human that I work with, because it takes a lot of courage to step over that fence. It's huge. You know that, Elizabeth. It's massive.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I feel like we've covered a lot of ground today. What else should I have asked you, Mary? What other questions should I be asking you?
I think that, we spoke about this before, and I think that I love to talk about the implementation component of anyone that starts a business. And Elizabeth, this is the gap that I'm seeing in the marketplace right now. A lot of people are really focused on, I want to find my purpose, my potential. They, following all these, feminine power system coaching programs, which are all wonderful. There's nothing wrong with any of that. It's just that to me, it's the wrong way around. I believe that when you're wanting to transition into a solopreneur, entrepreneur, business owner, whatever label you want to give it, there is a massive component of that transition is to understand what your implementation strategy actually looks like in all the different aspects of your business, your brand, your systemization, your digitalization, and also your lead generation strategy. Once all of those implementations are understood and implemented, you then have a real business that can be scaled for years and years and years to come. Also, you can that business can be an online business or an offline business. It doesn't matter anymore. So the implementation plan to me is such a critical piece of the puzzle, yet everyone hates doing it. It's the last thing on the list. And this is why we see so many people failing, because they're just chasing and reacting. I need a sale to get me to the next month. And if I don't get a sale, it's too reactive. And that's not how business owners work. We have to actually be responsive to our business. And to do that, and having an implementation plan that you can follow, of course, makes the journey so much easier. But if you don't have the investment you can't invest in someone helping you, then we still need to have a plan in place that requires an understanding of all of the moving parts. Otherwise, it never transitions into a real business. It always remains as a hobby. And this gap is the gap. That's the problem of why so many people, when they transition, go back to their full-time job, is because they thought that I'll just transition, I'll get a couple of clients, it'll get me through some referrals, and then it'll just take a life of its own. No, it doesn't, because a branded business card and a letterhead is non-sustainable anymore. What people want and what people are prepared to pay for, especially in premium pricing, Elizabeth, is a system that's tried and tested, that can deliver a solution, an outcome, and a promise. If you can't do that, you're just going to be stuck on that hourly rate of $100, $150, which is not scalable. What I'm talking about here is, how do you scale a business? How do you charge $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 for your solution, and you continue to scale that years and years in the future? And also, most importantly, the implementation plan is a system. What does a system have? Input, output, a feedback loop. It must have those three elements. So if your business can't provide you with a feedback loop, how do you make your program or your solution or your business better, faster, cheaper, thinner, etc.? So we have to understand that technology today is creating this mindset already in the mind of the consumer. They want something faster, quicker, smaller, cheaper, etc. We see this mindset already. Most coaches don't get this concept. And so what I like to bring light on is this idea to invest in your system, and then you wrap it around with mental mastery. That's the feminine. That's the last thing in my program. It's like we wrap it around with you embodying that version that you've just implemented. Now you've got to step up and become the coach. And that's my way. That's my approach.
And it's completely backwards from every other
everyone
program
else
I've encountered along the way.
Correct.
Different. Yeah. So everyone else is talking about do your niche focus exercises and all those things at the beginning, but you're actually talking about having the infrastructure ready to go and then go, now what? I love that. Or
Exactly.
it's like switching it completely on its head. Very
Exactly.
radical. Oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I think we need to wrap it up there. I'm just going to ask you one question that I didn't warn you about. So, what's your favorite song, Mary?
Oh my God. Oh, gee whiz. Oh, you wouldn't believe this, but I am a professionally trained singer. Like I have had voice training from the age of 5. So music is in my heart. I think I'm going to say Hallelujah. I think that's my favorite song ever. And yeah, that's my favorite. You'll get me on that at every karaoke. So
Right, awesome. All right. Mary Henderson, thank you so much for joining us on
thank
the Get
you.
Out of Teaching podcast today. It's been amazing.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Get Out of Teaching podcast with your host, Elizabeth Diakos. If you want to hear the conversation that continued after we stopped recording, you'll find that in the After the Bell section of the Get Out of Teaching private membership community, where along with a heap of resources to support you, you'll get access to group coaching with me. Join a community of teachers who are ready right now to plan their exit. Find out how at www.getoutofteaching.com. I've been where you are now, and you don't have to do this alone.